Hi and welcome to another carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and today we are going to be talking about the difference between mathematical expressions, equations, and inequalities. Although these terms are frustratingly similar in how they sound, they do mean slightly different things, so it's a good idea to know the definitions for each so that you're able to communicate with classmates or friends or teachers effectively. We're going to start with expressions. Expressions are what we could call something like mathematical phrases, in the sense that just like a phrase in language isn't quite a complete thought, a mathematical expression isn't quite a complete mathematical thought either. Expressions can include numbers, variables, and operations. But what they don't have is some sort of comparison between two values or two mathematical phrases. So, for example, an expression could be as simple as just a number on its own, something like 37. An expression could also be a number with a variable, so something like 8b. We could also have some operations happening. Just like with 8b, we have hidden multiplication happening. We could also have something like 37x plus 4c all over 9. The important thing in each of these expressions is that there's no type of comparison between multiple values. There's no equal sign or any inequality symbol to tell us the relationship between this expression and some other expression. That's why we call expressions mathematical phrases. They don't quite complete the thought or tell us what we're supposed to compare this value to. On the flip side, equations, just like expressions, will also be made up of numbers, variables, and operations, and any combination thereof. But what's different is that they do compare two expressions. Specifically, they tell us that those two expressions are equal. They have the same value, even if they're being represented two different ways. Equations will always include an equal sign, and that's the only way that we can see equations being used. So a quick thing to look out for to identify an equation is that equal sign. If you see an equal sign, you know with 100% certainty that you have an equation. Last but not least, we have inequalities. These can also be made up of numbers, variables, and operations, and any combination thereof. Like equations, they're also going to compare two expressions. But the difference here is that we're not saying that those two expressions are exactly equal to each other. Instead, we're saying that one is either greater or less than the other. We have a couple different symbols to help us out with these relationships, and it's always important to read these symbols from left to right, just like you would as you're reading a sentence. So going from left to right, if we start with the smallest point of the symbol and open up to the widest gap between the two lines, that is the less than symbol. It says that the first quantity, whatever is on the left, is smaller than the second quantity, whatever is on the right. Going the opposite direction, when we start with the widest part first, so the widest part is the first thing you see as you read from left to right, that is greater than, telling us that the value on the left-hand side is larger than the value on the right-hand side. So one way to think about these symbols is wherever you see the wide part of the symbol pointing, that is the larger value or the greater value. Now we do have one more wrench that we can throw into this, which is including a line underneath these symbols. This line is like the bottom part of the equal sign. So what it tells us is that the relationship between the two values we're considering, or the two expressions we're considering, could be, for example, with the top symbol, less than, but they could also be equal. So we're happy with any situation that makes the first value either less than the second value or equal to the second value. So this allows for some greater options and makes more inclusive comparisons between those two expressions. So hopefully now, if you hear some of these terms used in class or come across them in a textbook, you'll have a better understanding of what they mean. It's also really good to make sure that you're using the right vocabulary if you're trying to ask a question, especially to a teacher or a professor who might be really well versed in mathematical language. If you're using terms lightly that have lots of meaning to those people, they might not understand your question correctly. Well, I hope that this has been a helpful review of the difference between expressions, equations, and inequalities. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And if there are any other topics that you'd like to see covered or you'd like me to go into more detail on, please just let me know in the comments. There's also a link to my website in the description if you'd like to book one-on-one time or send a more direct message. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys next time.